The city is going up in flames, but our guy is stuck in his own head, wondering how history is going to label him. Will he be remembered as the loyal knight who stayed by his emperor until the very end, or just an absolute idiot who chose the wrong side? And the funny part is, he doesn't like either outcome. This is Kane, a member of the Imperial Guard who served under an emperor that completely lost his mind and even made a contract with a demon, basically meaning our guy picked the worst possible leader. Cut to a man completely breaking down over Kane's body, yelling at him and calling him a fool. This is Hella Reston, the leader of the rebellion, and he's clearly not okay. He's crying, asking why Kane turned his blade at the last second, like, you could have just run away. Why didn't you? He grabs him, shaking him, shouting, open your eyes, damn it. But yeah, Kane's already gone. Nothing left. Completely lifeless. Now Kane finds himself walking through a strange afterlife that looks like a painting melted into reality. And he's like, so this is death? This is supposed to be freedom? Just wandering forever in something that looks like a screensaver? Kinda disappointing. Still, he admits it was nice that Hella cried for him. That part felt good. He figures he might as well accept this so-called freedom when suddenly a glowing blue orb flies straight at him and dives into his eye. Next thing he knows, he's opening his eyes again, and there's this old man who looks a lot like Hella, just way older and wrinkled, calling him Karen. The man asks the father if he wants to hold the baby, while everyone comments on how the child isn't even crying and how strong he seems. Meanwhile, Kane's mind is completely lagging, trying to understand what's going on. And then it clicks. This old man is Hella, just decades older. That's when baby Kane starts crying, because he realizes he's been reincarnated as his best friend's grandson. Hella thinks he somehow upset the baby, but nah, this is just a full-on existential breakdown happening in infant form. Fast forward, and now we're in a classroom where a professor is talking about the legendary knight Kane, who died 45 years ago alongside the emperor and is remembered as the ultimate symbol of loyalty. Sitting there listening is 10-year-old Karen, and he is absolutely not buying it. The professor suggests that Duke Hallow, Karen's grandfather, probably wanted to restore his friend's reputation since they were close. But Karen immediately shuts that idea down, saying he thinks his grandfather is holding on to resentment and deliberately turning his dead friend into a hero just to mess with his legacy. The professor just freezes, completely caught off guard. Karen explains that Hella can't accept that Kane probably wanted a quiet death instead of being turned into some legendary figure, but now he's being used as propaganda. Hearing this, the professor starts sweating because a 10-year-old just dropped a wildly controversial interpretation of history. He nervously says he's never considered that perspective before. Karen laughs it off, saying he was joking, but yeah, he's now living as Karen Reston, the third son of Count Pale, Hella's youngest child. And he's still annoyed that Hella turned him into a hero when that's the exact opposite of what he wanted. Speaking of his father, Pale is shown kneeling in prayer. He's incredibly kind but worried, since he never awakened magic and fears his son might inherit that limitation. Karen reassures him, placing a hand on his shoulder and calling him the best father ever, which makes Pale emotional as he hugs him and pinches his cheeks before asking what he wants to eat. Naturally, Karen says, meat. That night, Karen lies in bed thinking about the upcoming awakening ceremony. He remembers Hella explaining how not everyone awakens magic, and even if they do, it doesn't guarantee they'll become the family head. There's also a secret only the head knows. Back then, he asked if it was something like treasure or a magic book, pretending not to care but clearly curious. Hella said he'd tell him if he became head, but Karen replied he'd rather just live quietly somewhere far away. Except, he's already awakened. A blue aura quietly surrounds him as he thinks, "Don't worry, Dad. I've already got this handled." Turns out he awakened a long time ago and just never told anyone. The next day, the family heads to the capital, and Karen is super excited because it's his first time riding a train. His mother explains that the train system exists largely thanks to his father, praising him while smiling proudly. Even Karen is surprised, realizing that even without magic, Pale is impressive in other ways. He funded major projects and contributes heavily to the family's income. Still, Karen quickly forgets all that because he's too busy geeking out over the train ride. As they pass by the Reston family's main estate, the Azure Sea Fortress, Karen smirks. He's about to see his grandfather again, his former friend Hella, and the man who turned him into a legendary figure. But Karen already has a plan. He's going to become the complete opposite of what Hella built him up to be. He'll make sure all that effort was pointless and become someone totally unworthy of the family name. Honestly, after being turned into a glorified symbol against his will, it's hard to blame him. He quietly tells his old friend to wait, because his beloved grandson is on the way. When they arrive, a man named Heinrich greets them formally. Karen immediately notices the knights around him. They're far more capable than the ones back home. He figures it's only a matter of time before his secret is discovered, but he doesn't really care. Inside the palace, he's taken to a reception room while his father meets the elders. Looking around, he's impressed by how massive it is, even though it's just a waiting room. As he starts getting bored, another kid mocks him, calling him a bookworm and saying that since his father never awakened magic, his chances are low too. So he better focus on studying if he wants to survive like a commoner. He even insults Karen's haircut. Then the kid makes a huge mistake. He challenges him to a fight. Confident in his own magic, he says he'll teach Karen a lesson. But Karen simply glares and asks if the main family is raising delinquents now. As Karen releases his aura, the kid's confidence completely collapses. He stammers, asking when Karen awakens since no one mentioned it. Karen casually replies that even his own father doesn't know yet, and adds that there's no room for two troublemakers here. "I'll take that role," he says. "So step aside." And just like that, he decides it's time to beat him down. Cut to the elders' meeting, where they're discussing Karen's awakening. 3 captains have already confirmed it, and Raphael, the second son, is immediately suspicious, asking what Pale is planning. Pale, completely confused, responds that he didn't even know about it himself. Meanwhile, the eldest son, Tails, tells Raphael to relax with the conspiracy theories, pointing out that Pale never even awakened magic. That just makes Raphael scoff and call him pathetic, until suddenly, a man bursts into the room, urgently calling for Heinrich. Raphael storms off, following the butler. They arrive to find Leo completely wrecked, sprawled across a couch like he just got demolished in a brutal fight. Seeing his son in that state, Raphael completely loses it. He immediately grabs Karen by the collar, shouting about his behavior and demanding to know what he was thinking. Pale tries to step in, but Karen calmly explains that Leo insulted his father, and there was no way he was going to just stand there and take it. Raphael calls it nonsense, but before things escalate further, Pale grabs his shoulder and tells him to stop. Raphael snaps back, blaming Pale's parenting for Karen's actions, only for Heinrich to suddenly announce that the Duke himself will be making the decision. That instantly silences everyone. They all head toward Hella's study, with Raphael still fuming the entire way. Once inside, Hella asks why Karen caused such a scene the moment he arrived. Pale starts to explain, but Hella cuts him off, saying he wants to hear directly from Karen. However, he also adds that Pale raised him well, and there must be a reason behind his actions. Karen is a bit surprised at that, thinking that this kind of fairness doesn't really suit Hella. Still, he answers honestly, saying that Leo insulted his father. Raphael immediately calls him a liar, but Hella slams his desk and orders him to be quiet, demanding respect. Raphael backs down instantly, apologizing. Hella then says they'll bring Leo in to confirm the story, before turning back to Karen and mentioning there's something else he wants to ask. Without hesitation, Karen brings it up himself. "If you're asking about my magic," he says casually, "I awakened it 3 years ago." The entire room goes completely silent. Hella stares at him, clearly shocked, and asks why he would hide something like that, especially from his own father. Karen simply explains that at first, he didn't even realize what it was. He only figured it out later after reading about it in a book. And once he understood, he decided it would be more interesting to keep it hidden. Hella asks him why. Karen answers with a completely straight face, because it was fun. He even adds that it was especially entertaining since none of the knights in his territory noticed either, meaning he's basically been fooling everyone for 3 years straight. At that moment, the butler brings in Leo, who's practically wrapped up like a mummy. Hella asks him directly if he really insulted his uncle. Leo hesitates, clearly scared, but before he can answer, Karen suddenly puts on an act, saying that even if Leo mocked his father, he still shouldn't have responded with violence and admits he did wrong. That completely throws Leo off. As he remembers the overwhelming pressure from Karen's aura, he panics and quickly admits that everything Karen said is true. Hela nods and announces that punishment for both of them will be decided after the awakening ceremony the next day, then dismisses everyone. Later, when only Hela and Heinrich remain, Hela asks what he thinks about Karen. Heinrich says he's unsure, but there's definitely something unusual about him. Hela agrees, pointing out that not only did Karen awaken on his own and hide it for years, but he also subtly questioned the strength of the knights assigned to his father's territory, almost as if he was implying negligence. Heinrich suggests he might be overthinking it, but Hela shakes his head. I hope so, he says. But that child is different. He decides to observe him closely during the ceremony, since awakening magic alone doesn't reveal everything. What truly matters is what Karen gains from the ritual and whether he completes it safely. Hela is deeply curious. The scene then shifts to a secluded altar deep within a forest, clearly the site of the ceremony. Night falls, and Karen is escorted through the forest, surrounded by nearly the entire family. As he looks around, he's surprised. They really brought everyone, including retired elders who still seem strong enough to fight. Tails is there, along with his daughter Lean, Raphael, and Leo as well. The full lineup is present, making Karen realize this ceremony is far more important than he initially thought. Eventually, they arrive at the altar, where a mysterious stone rests. Karen immediately recognizes it, the Stone of Oath. Hela steps forward, his tone serious as he explains the process. Once Karen enters the rift created by the stone, he'll face a personalized nightmare, something unique to him. His goal is to obtain a weapon from that world and destroy it. Karen nods calmly, saying he understands. Hela raises an amulet, activating the ritual. The moment it connects with the stone, reality itself begins to distort. Space twists, and the air grows heavy with pressure, forcing everyone to brace themselves. Hela asks Karen if he's afraid, while Pale watches anxiously. But Karen just shrugs it off, saying he'll be back soon. After all, destroying things has always been his specialty. As he steps toward the rift, Hela calls out one last piece of advice, telling him to overcome his fear. Karen walks through the portal, and the moment he does, he finds himself back in his old body, as Cain, on the day of the revolution. Out of all the possibilities, it had to be this. Karen immediately clicks his tongue in annoyance, realizing the trial is forcing him to relive the worst moment of his life. It's dragging up the guilt he's been carrying, throwing the memories of his fallen comrades right in front of him. As he moves toward the throne room, a strange voice echoes around him, calling him a child of his bloodline and referencing an ancient pact tied to his ancestors. Karen frowns, wondering if it's some kind of demon. But the voice responds cryptically, saying his bloodline is too pure for something like that, and tells him to move forward. Pushing open the doors, he finally sees it. The throne. The very thing the Emperor was so obsessed with that he made a deal with a demon for it. Karen stands there, realizing that everything, every death, every sacrifice, traces back to what sits before him. And as he steps closer, it feels like he's walking over the bodies of his fallen comrades just to reach it. The voice keeps going on, talking about how Karen, blessed by the cold northern sea, has finally made it here. It welcomes him on behalf of the Blue Clan. Then Karen notices it. His old sword, the one he used back when he was Cain. The blade given to him by the Emperor. Ruin. And yeah, no surprise, it's a demonic weapon. The voice tells him to channel his mana into it, but Karen immediately shuts that idea down. Hard pass. That thing literally devours souls. The voice insists, explaining that his grandfather already purified it, and what he's seeing now is just a demonic illusion trying to intimidate him. Even so, Karen hesitates. Touching that sword means facing everything, every memory of blindly following the Emperor's commands. But then he recalls his grandfather's words about overcoming fear, and that's when it clicks. So that's the point of all this. This ceremony isn't just about getting a powerful weapon. It's basically therapy disguised as a trial. The heir has to confront their deepest fear head-on. Karen sighs and grabs the sword. Fine. If that's what this is, let's just get it over with. The moment he pours mana into it, everything shifts, and suddenly he's dropped into the depths of the ocean, floating in the darkness. He looks around. What is this? the Azure Sea. As he watches, the blade begins to change. The sinister, demonic appearance fades away, revealing something far more refined, pure. Karen realizes this isn't just any weapon. It's the original blade of his ancestor, Rael. His grandfather wields a progenitor sword too, but this one is different, so powerful and so far removed from the family's current style that it was erased from history altogether. Then the sword goes wild. A massive surge of energy floods into Karen's body, nearly overwhelming him. He struggles to stay conscious, asking what the hell is happening. The voice calmly tells him to endure it, that the sword is imprinting its mana into him. Karen grits his teeth, thinking this is the most intense power-up he's ever experienced. Finally, he asks what the sword is actually called. The voice answers in a dramatic tone, explaining that this blade was created to kill demons and consume their power. It was so feared that demons themselves erased its existence from memory. Forged from the deep, pure waters of the Northern Sea. Its true name is Guillotine, the executioner's blade. Karen stares at it in silence. The voice continues, saying the weapon suits him perfectly, dark and deep, just like the ocean. Curious, Karen asks who, or what, the voice is, guessing it might be the blue dragon that protects their bloodline. But the voice refuses, saying he's not yet worthy to know its name. If he ever becomes strong enough to rule the seas, he can find it in the north. That leaves Karen slightly annoyed, but he's got more important concerns, like how to get out of here. The voice tells him he already knows the answer. Karen smirks, realizing what he has to do. Destroy the throne. He channels his mana into Guillotine and swings with everything he has. Back outside, the atmosphere is tense. Hela notices Pale looking nervous and tells him to relax. Pale apologizes, saying it's hard watching his son go through something he never experienced himself. Hela gives him a bit of advice about staying composed, and Pale manages a small smile. But then the Stone of Oath starts glowing again. Except this time something's wrong. Instead of stabilizing, it begins to crack. Hela's expression changes instantly as space itself starts warping again. The forest pulses with energy, and the altar begins to collapse. What is happening? He shouts. And then, through the chaos, Karen casually steps out, holding his new sword like nothing unusual just happened. Everyone stares. Karen looks around, trying to find the Stone of Oath, but it's gone. Because apparently, he didn't just pass the trial. He broke it. Now everyone is completely stunned, trying to process what just happened. Pale, on the verge of panic, starts yelling at him, asking what he did and why the stone is destroyed. Karen is just as confused, honestly having no idea what he just caused. Meanwhile, Hela is staring at the sword. His face goes pale as he whispers its name. Guillotine. Almost no one knows about that weapon. It was practically erased from history, like it never existed. Only the family head and a few elders know about it through oral tradition. He looks at Karen and asks if he's afraid of it, but then pauses, sensing something, muttering about an approaching covenant. Karen glances down at the blade and shrugs. Nope, I'm fine. Hela nods. Good. He then explains that long ago, their ancestors made a pact with a blue dragon to destroy all demons, but they failed. The Stone of Oath was left behind as proof of that attempt, passing the responsibility to future generations. And now, it seems Karen has inherited that burden. Hela raises his hand and formally declares Karen, son of Pale, a recognized member of the fortress, chosen by Guillotine and qualified to learn the Spirit Sea technique. Which sounds great, until you realize it basically means he's been drafted into an ancient war. Raphael, still bitter about his son getting wrecked, grumbles that he can't believe a kid like Karen is receiving this honor. Meanwhile, Tails is more curious about the sword itself. Pale comforts Karen, admitting he thought he knew every weapon in their family, but this one is completely unfamiliar and honestly unsettling. Still, he supports his son. Hela announces the ceremony is over. Time to head back. As they leave, Raphael starts arguing with Tails, asking if he's really just going to accept this. Tails calmly says they need to talk later, pointing out that even someone as ambitious as Raphael should understand how serious this situation is. When asked if he knew about the sword, Tails says no, it's his first time seeing it. Raphael is left completely shaken, questioning why Pale's son of all people was chosen. Pale tries to calm things down, saying this isn't the time for internal conflict. The next day, at the train station, Pale worries about leaving Karen behind at the fortress. Hinrich reassures him there's no safer place. Pale agrees, externally yes, but he's more concerned about threats within the family. Hinrich then reveals that Karen's instructor for the Spirit Sea technique will be Lady Sabina. Pale immediately relaxes, saying he hasn't seen his aunt in years. But if it's her, everything will be fine. Karen recognizes the name too. Hela's sister, once known as the White Wolf. Pale warns him not to be disrespectful, since she used to spoil him. Karen agrees. Hinrich adds that Pale will have a residence in the fortress so he can visit anytime, which makes Pale emotional as he thanks his father. After saying goodbye, Pale boards the train. Karen heads into the fortress with Hinrich, who warns him of one very important thing. Sabina hates being called grandmother. Karen thanks him, though internally he's confused about what's wrong with calling someone that. Inside, Hinrich explains that only direct descendants can enter the training chamber. Sabina is already inside, and so is Leo. Karen gets excited. Training with Leo should be fun. As he enters, Hinrich watches him go, thinking things are about to get interesting again. Standing outside, Karen can already feel the intense aura inside. Then a voice calls out, asking if he plans to stand there forever. He enters, bows, and freezes. Sabina looks way younger than expected. She doesn't look like a grandmother at all. She casually greets him, and Karen realizes she must have reconstructed her body using advanced magic, something only an 8-star knight could do. She snaps at him to stop standing around and sit next to Leo. She mentions she's surprised he knows her title, and Karen explains he read about her in books. She smiles, saying he's just as interesting as Hela described. When he asks what Hela said, she explains that he believes Karen is someone destined to navigate a vast ocean, and that she must help him reach the point where he can rule it. She stands and announces training will begin. Explaining the Spirit Sea technique, she says they create oceans within their bodies using mana. The more they can control, the stronger they become. 8 oceans equals the 8th star. Controlling all 8 as one, that's the 9th star. Only 3 people on the continent have reached that level. In the Empire, only 1. Karen immediately realizes it's his grandfather. And this time, he decides he'll reach that level too. Sabina senses his determination and smiles. Training begins. She tells him to let his mana flow through the pathways opened during the ritual, reminding him that the power of the sea isn't something you force into submission, it's something you accept. Karen focuses, saying it feels like violent waves crashing inside him, and that he needs to calm it down. He starts guiding the flow from his heart, slowly stabilizing it. And right away, there's a clear difference between him and Leo. Sabina notices it immediately. She wonders if this is really the mana of someone who just completed the awakening ritual. Even Leo, who has been training for 2 years with proper techniques, has only just begun reaching toward the 2nd star level. Meanwhile, Karen is already carving out his mana pathways on his own, without even being taught how. Karen suddenly winces, saying it feels like his body is being torn apart, and stops his training. Sabina observes carefully, noting that he's feeling the strain but still able to regulate himself. Then she glances over at Leo. And yeah, he's completely overdoing it. She immediately scolds him, reminding him not to force his mana flow. Leo apologizes, and she realizes she got too focused on Karen, forgetting that despite awakening their power, they're still just kids. She also can't help but wonder why Leo's hair still looks so messed up. That's exactly why she needs to act like the responsible adult here, to make sure they don't destroy their own bodies in the process. Watching Karen, she's impressed. He stopped at the right moment, avoiding damage, even while pushing himself. At such a young age, having that level of control despite his desire to grow stronger shows just how exceptional he is. She thinks to herself that her brother really left behind something remarkable, but at the same time, she realizes something else. She probably won't need to guide him like a lighthouse. Walking over, she calls out to him and tells him that for the next 3 years, she'll ensure his safety, but he needs to focus on gaining the strength to protect himself. Karen nods. Now it's time for practical training. They head out to the main training grounds, where other trainees are already practicing. Even one guy who looks like he belongs in a completely different genre is going at it. The instructor turns as Karen and Leo arrive. Leo looks at Karen and asks if he's really planning to train with that sword. Karen answers without hesitation. Of course. Apparently, people have been complaining that the sword's aura is too intense, so he's not even allowed to unsheath it. Leo shakes his head. That's not what he meant. The instructor steps forward and introduces himself.